What's up, everybody? Sam Smyers here. So I have always been curious how to make this like FME sounding one shot that's very aggressive in the song Purple Lamborghini by Skrillex and Rick Ross. And so I wanted to challenge myself, see what I could come up with just using Serum. Now, when I listen to that actual one shot, it sounds like to me there's a few layers, like maybe a clap impact. Maybe there's something going on with like the reverb, and also you've got the FM sound and then the sub sound. So this is the FM stab that I'm talking about. I'll play you this just original stab that happens in the song. Kind of sounds like that. So you can hear what I mean by you got that clap in the beginning that has that like initial attack, and then this last section, you hear that reverb ringing out. Now, if I'm making this in Serum, the reverb is not great. So I was kind of limited by the reverb. And then also with the clap impact thing, I was trying to like make a clap impact and then import it into the noise oscillator. But this is just what I came up with from using Serum. This is what it sounds like. So that is what I came up with. And so I think it's pretty close, and that is just this Serum patch. So no other plugins. So I can just kind of play this on Serum now. Pretty aggressive, pretty great FM stab. I think will be good for like bass music, bass house. I'm going to be making a bass house pack that I'm going to put this into, and also you can get this on my Patreon. So let me just break this down and go through it as easily as possible. Now let me just turn off the oscillator A. So oscillator A and B, this is where you're getting that like FM sound, and this is going all through all of these effects. So the simplest two things, I've got the sub oscillator and the noise oscillator, and these are adding that impact. You've got the sub really clean that gives you that like low end punch, and then this bright white noise I have as a clap. And now what you can do, if you've ever tried synthesizing a clap sound, well, if you haven't, then I'll show you how to do it. You take a bright white noise or just any kind of noise, and then you do this like shape where you've got a point here, and then a point here. So you've got these three different shapes. So this is just what a clap sounds like. And you can play around with this, but this is how any like 808 clap is made. And just to show you what I mean, we can take a look at an 808 clap. An 808 clap, you see, has 1, 2, 3 of these different points, and that's what I'm doing with that LFO shape. I'm creating those 3 loud points, and I can, let's go ahead and just warp this, and I'll slow it down. 1, 2, 3. You can hear it now happening really slow. So that is how you make a clap. That's how you synthesize a clap. So if you ever want to make your own clap, that's how you do it. So I found that was like the cleanest way for me to get that clap impact at the beginning of the sound, was just to do this shape. I mean, before I was trying to just drag in the clap 808, but for some reason the noise oscillator wasn't sounding how I wanted it to sound. So that's how you have this clap, and it's going direct out, so none of the effects or anything are affecting it. And same with the sub. These are not affecting any of the effects. And what I'll do now as I show you the rest of this, and actually I have this on one shot because let me just play this. It sounds like there's some weird phasing going on if I don't have it on one shot. So let me just turn these off, and then we can go over all of the rest of the FM stuff, which is pretty crazy. Let's turn off all of these effects. So now that sound, it's pretty simple sound like that, or not simple sound, but it's pretty recognizable, just like an FM type of noise. And I'm using this LFO1. You see I've got this slow attack, slowing down envelope at 1/8. And let me just speed up my BPM because I had it slow. And you can see this is the shape that I'm using to control like six different things. It's controlling the FM from B, so it's going up, FM all the way up, going down, giving us that like horn shape. And then I have it attached to this filter, this high 24 filter, which gives it this like washy sound. And I don't want any of the low end going into the effects because I'm adding in the sub direct out, and I want that sub to be really clean. Otherwise, if I don't cut off the low end, then it's going to affect like all of these other effects. So if I take this off, then you can hear that sub low end, but we don't need that because we're going to be adding it back in using the direct out sub. So then if you turn this on, then it adds this kind of like swishy sound. Like it's like wow wow wow, that type of sound with when you turn on the compression and the distortion. So that's what this is doing. Then I have the envelope 2, which is really short, like a click sound. I have this tied to the FM as well. And what you can do is you can create a really short envelope 2 and attach it to like your noise or even the FM as well to get this like click sound. So I can hear how it's like adding that click, and I just have it about here to add a little extra click to that FM at the top. And then I've got the L2, the LFO2. This is going to be, I'm going to right click, tied to the master tuning. So this is master tuning, got that 12, and that's something that you can do to add more like click. So you can hear what happens when I slow down this rate. And that's what you do for like a lot of drum sounds. You do tie like an LFO or an envelope to like the chorus tuning, because when you hit like a percussive drum, that usually starts out at like a higher pitch and goes to a lower pitch pretty quickly. Then this is the clap sound. And this one isn't tied to anything. I have a bypass, but I was playing around with like, what if it pitches down even more? Because in the original sound, I was trying to look at the pitch of the original sound, and it was like, almost like the sub was a different couple of notes different than this higher FME part. So I was trying to figure that out, but it didn't really make sense to create a preset that you could play that was like super out of tune with the notes on the keyboard. So I just bypassed this, not using that one. So just these 2, really, this main one to get the shape, and then this second one. And these are both envelopes. So I could have gone into my envelope and shaped it like this. Sometimes it's just easier to create more of these points on the LFOs because you can get a bit more control. So that's why I tended to do some of the envelope type of shapes on the LFOs if I can. And this oscillator, you got this at the -2, randomness down, because this helps with like FM stuff. Sometimes, like if you play a note, it might mess up the, it might sound like really different when the randomness is all the way up and you have like a lot of FM. Levels all the way down, +1 octave, fine tuning slightly off. That's probably not super necessary. I've also got these macro knobs tied to some different things, but you don't really need to worry about any of those. So let's get into the effects. Now the effects, you have your, I have the multiband compressor. Now in the multiband compressor, when you first load it up, these bars are all at about 100, but I took out that low end just because I really wanted to use this compressor to brighten up the sound and get really that like FM, higher frequencies of that FME sound. Then I have this asymmetric distortion. I was just playing around with the filter. I have it off, so I'm not using it. And the asymmetric distortion, I have this LFO1 attached to the drive in the mix. And so this is what this is doing is when you use distortion and you have it all the way up, distortion adds a lot of drive, and it also takes away the dynamics. So if I attach an LFO to the drive in the mix, it almost adds back the dynamics, because what it is doing is adding more drive and more of the mix at the top part of this LFO and then taking it away. So I'll get like a more dynamic sound than if I just had this without the LFO. And in Serum, if you put a compressor before the distortion, you can drive up this gain and increase the amount of like crunch you can get out of the distortion. So you can hear how, like, what a big difference the signal flow makes on having the compressor before the distortion. Now, once again, I just put on that low cut because I don't want that low end. I'm going to be using the sub and I want that sub to be really clean. And then I have this like frequency that dips down really fast. Once again, using this LFO1. Whether that is necessary, let's see. I mean, it kind of adds something cool, like a bit of movement. Then to get my width, I'm adding on the dimension and also the hyper. And then I add on the delay. And with the delay, what I am doing is putting the feedback really high, and the delay, it's not linked. It's not, the BPM is turned off. So I adjusted these manually by the milliseconds. And if you have really high feedback and really short delays, then you get this like metallic-y sound. So I'm adding in this like metallic-y sound to that, to this like horn FM sound. And that just like makes it sound a bit wider, a bit cooler, and then putting that into my plate reverb, which once again is not like the best reverb. Maybe if you used a Valhalla Vintage Reverb, you could get some more of that top end ringing that you would want out of the reverb to get it a bit closer to the original. So those are all the effects for the that FM part, and then you add in the sub and the clap again. And then you have more of that like impact from the stab. So yeah, that's a pretty cool sound. If you do want to grab this preset, I'll put a link down below where you can grab it. If you do want to check out any of my other Serum presets, head on over to store.samsmyers.com, or you can check out my Patreon.